Hello. The purpose of this video is to encourage you to consider doing a periodic reading skills reality check. By virtue of the fact that you're tuning in to my channel, I'm just going to assume that reading is extremely important to you. It is certainly extremely important to me. And because it is important to us, I think it behooves us from time to time to sit back and consider whether we're really doing it as well as we think that we're doing it, whether we're doing it as well as we could and should be doing it. Because a lot of automatic processes, and reading becomes automatic, people do them, but not necessarily well. Take something as basic and fundamental as breathing. Well, if you haven't suffocated and died, you've gotten enough oxygen to stay alive until now, that's something. But people who study breathing as a science, be it pranayama or modern medicine, will tell you that most people do not breathe right. Most people breathe in a very shallow, superficial way, and it's possible to breathe much more healthfully, much more deeply. Or take something like walking. When you learn how to do it as a toddler, till the time when and if you have some sort of physical impediment, you take it for granted. You just move automatically from point A to point B. But every so often, you will see somebody walking with incredible grace and poise and a really elegant gait and perfect posture. And you'll look at her and you'll say, wow, she must be a ballerina or a gymnast or something. And you realize that compared to her, most people seem like they're sort of slumped over and shuffling along with bad posture and a bad gait. And most people probably includes you and me. And I do think that reading, likewise, has at least four traps that it's possible to fall into, even if you know that they're there, or four sins that it's possible, it's easy to commit, even if you know about them. And if you don't know about them, it's almost impossible to avoid falling into them or committing them. And I'll talk about these four traps or sins in this video as they pertain to everybody, but I think they're particularly dangerous for those of us with polyitis and an inclination towards polyliteracy, because clearly reading in multiple languages is so important to us. I would like to use my own life as an example of what I'm talking about. You see me sitting in a different corner of my library today. The library, you might have noticed, follow me from Singapore to Dubai, back to the States if you followed my videos for years. I have loved reading for many years. Ever since I learned how to do it when I was a small boy, I immediately became a bookworm and carried piles of books around with me and enjoyed going to the public library more than I enjoyed going anywhere else. And the American school system, we start when we're 6 in first grade and go till we're 18 in 12th grade. And every year we're tested for reading to see if we're reading at or below or above your grade level. And to the best of my recollection, I think I was right in the middle, maybe about 12 and 6th grade when I tested it at the 12th grade, the 18-year-old reading level. I didn't read 18-year-olds' books at that point, but I started doing so shortly after that. When I was an adolescent, I stopped just reading stories and I started reading philosophy and history and other nonfiction books as well. Was always very studious in school, got good grades or marks, and also we have standardized tests for getting into college and university, the SAT and the GRE and things like that. And on the reading sections of these tests, I always got perfect 100% marks. So I got scholarships to go to good universities and study as long as I wanted, whatever I wanted. And when I was done, they gave me a doctorate and said, you can't study anymore, but you can teach now. So I've been doing that for the past 25 years, quarter of a century experience now, helping people learn how to read in different languages. So when you hear a biography like that, you say, probably, whatever else we think about this guy, you probably have to give him that. He probably reads pretty well. Well, you got to give him that. I don't know that I deserve that. I don't know that I always read very well. I don't know that I always read as well as I could and should be reading. I think I fall into these traps, or I tend to commit these sins even though I know about them. So I do this reality check and now I'm sharing it with you. So the first sin, or the first trap that it's possible to fall into, is I think it grows out of laziness perhaps, but just out of the sheer automaticity of the reading process, that you don't think about it. It just happens automatically. As soon as your eyes fall upon the text, you just immediately start reading and getting the information in you without stopping often enough to think about what kind of text it is that you are reading. In my channel, I often talk about great books education. The Great Books of the Western World is a series put out by the Encyclopedia Britannica here in Columbia and the University of Chicago, where I got my education. Are great book schools where we read and discussed these books in small seminars, and that's very important to my ongoing efforts at continuing adult education. The people who put this series together, Mortimer Adler and Charles Van Doren, wrote this book, How to Read a Book, which is a critical work in my own life. I reread this book at least once a year, and when I do so, I think maybe I should read so twice a year or once every month, because I smack myself in the head and I say, I can't believe I got lazy again. And there's a lot of principles that they put out, and I've been glossing over them. I've been got sloppy on them. I tend to fall into this one-size-fits-all reading rather than thinking about the fact that there's one way of reading when you read for entertainment or enjoyment. There's another way of reading when you read for information, to get facts. There's another way of reading when you read analytically. There's another way of reading what they call syntopically across various books for a topic. And you need to read differently according to these. And instead of that, it's possible just to fall into that one-size-fits-all automatic reading process and not differentiate enough. So cure for that is to read this book periodically. I strongly recommend it. And another aside to that one-size-fits-all approach to reading is the assumption that reading faster is always better. There's all courses out there for speed reading, and they talk about increasing your comprehension, but the real focus is on speed. And I think everybody in the modern world feels like there aren't enough hours in the day, and obviously the faster you read, the more you can read, the better it is, right? And I think that will definitely affect you if you have polyitis and you cultivate your polyitis to the point where you develop lots of languages. And then you have an ongoing lifelong task of maintaining and balancing and practicing and using your languages. And so you probably develop some sort of schedule, and you say, well, I've got 15 languages that I want to read, and I've got about 4 hours a day, so that gives me about 15 minutes for each. So sure, I want to read fast so I can get something read in them. And you probably end up making a schedule, keeping track of your languages, making sure you get all these things done. And under circumstances like that, I've been there. I know it's all too easy to fall into sort of an automatic, almost mechanical, going through the paces, getting it done. You can check off your 15 minutes, but were you there in your head? Were you paying attention? Did you get much out of it? You might not have, because you were reading too fast. And also, the cure to reading too fast is also the cure to the next thing. You were probably reading silently. That's the third trap, to always and only read silently. My understanding is that in the ancient world, people did not read silently, and it was a shock when people who didn't know how to read silently first saw, I think it was Bishop Ambrose in the 8th century reading silently. So yeah, I have talked about scriptorium and about shadowing and other techniques, but the real silver bullet, the real secret to learning foreign languages is reading aloud. Reading aloud is the ultimate technique for processing didactic materials, but it's also the ultimate technique not just for savoring literature when you're reading it, but also for making sure that you are understanding it. Because if you reading aloud will make you slow down, But it will also, if you record yourself and listen to yourself, you'll be able to say, do I sound like I'm understanding the text, or am I doing it mechanically? Am I just sort of going through the words but not really giving it any intonation? One reason I made the video I did last week of myself reading a chapter of a Latin translation of a modern book, I hope that if you watch that, even if you didn't understand the language, you could see that I was trying to do it dramatically. I was trying to put feeling into it, and that will tell you if you are at least having an interpretation of a story, or if you're reading something that's an expository text, a philosophical essay or something, if you are sounding like you're understanding it or explaining it. So when you listen to yourself reading aloud, you can say, yeah, I obviously am understanding of what I'm doing or not. And the third, or that was the third, the first problem with reading is one size fits all. Second is always reading fast. And third is always reading silently. And the fourth trap or sin of reading is, again, it goes with reading fast and reading silently, is you finish the book, you close it, and you think you're done. What you really ought to do when you finish reading any book is, the best way I have ever heard it articulated is by Dr. Gary North, who is the curriculum designer of the Ron Paul homeschooling program that my sons followed. And he called this lecturing to the wall. And the point is that when you finish studying or reading something, you don't just put it aside and say, I'm done. You must stand there, and ideally, if you have somebody to say it to, that's best. So they usually said it to me if I was there, or to each other. But if you don't have somebody, you can just stand in a corner and say in your own words what you just read, what you learned. Make sure that you got something out of it. Not just regurgitate what in the words of the author, but say in your own words, give your own example, what you just read. And if you are unable to do that, that tells you that you're not reading effectively. You're not getting out of what you're doing. So that's a very good corrective. And that's something that's possible and to incorporate into to me, it's a new kind of education. After my quarter years of classroom teaching in colleges, for the past year and a half, I've been, COVID has been a game changer in education. And I think in particular, it offers exciting possibilities for lifelong engagement of learning for adults who want to continue to engage their mind by reading great books, and particularly in foreign languages. So for the past year and a half, I've been leading reading and discussion circles in German, particularly for small groups of people, limited sections, where we meet once a week and we read something aloud, and I make everybody go around in turn and summarize in their own words what they say, and then we talk about it, so they make sure that they're able to articulate what they just learned. I plan on sort of opening my virtual academy, and by the spring, I hope, and offering this kind of class on a much wider scale. So if that's something that sounds interesting to you, I hope we might be able to do that together in the near future. But in the meantime, please consider what I said today. If reading is important to you, think about this sort of reality check, whether you're really doing it as well as you could and should be doing it, whether you are using a one-size-fits-all, whether you're reading too swiftly, whether you're always reading silently, and whether you are sort of doing a lecture to the wall check of your comprehension. I hope this was interesting and useful to you, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.